right, so today we're going to be traveling back in time.
Ooh.
Way back, like 12,000 years
Okay.
to the world of hunter-gatherers.
I like it.
And we've got some excerpts from a text about technology and its impact on society.
Yep.
But we're not just going to be talking about dry facts.
Right.
We really want to get a sense of how these societies functioned,
Yeah.
daily life, and maybe even what we can learn from them today.
That's fascinating because, I think when most people hear the phrase hunter-gatherer,
Yeah.
it kind of conjures up these images of, loincloths and clubs.
Right.
But what we're looking at here is actually the tail end of that whole era.
Okay.
A time when things were on the verge of a truly massive shift.
So not quite the stereotypical caveman period.
Exactly. Farming was just starting to emerge,
Oh, wow.
which is going to change everything.
Yeah.
It's a really pivotal moment in human history.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Sure.
If I'm picturing these folks, I'm thinking small nomadic groups constantly on the move to find food,
Right.
completely reliant on the environment.
And that dependence is absolutely crucial to understanding their lives.
Okay.
You have to imagine that even a small group needed a vast territory
Wow.
just to survive.
Yeah.
Resources were scarce.
Yeah.
They had to be incredibly tuned in to
Yeah.
seasonal changes, animal migrations. They couldn't just settle down.
Right.
They were constantly on the move, adapting.
It's like they were living in a perpetual state of resource management.
They were.
That must have given them such a deep knowledge of their environment.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
They had to know which plants were edible,
Yeah.
where to find them.
At what times of year?
Exactly. At different times of year,
Wow.
where animals would be migrating. This incredibly complex and nuanced understanding of their world.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if their knowledge was almost hyper-local.
Interesting.
Like, did different kinship groups specialize in certain types of knowledge?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And actually, the text really emphasizes how vital kinship was
Okay.
to these societies. These weren't just, isolated families wandering around.
Yeah.
They were part of larger clans.
Okay.
Maybe 50, 100 adults spread over a wide area. And this sense of shared ancestry,
Yeah.
this belonging, really defined their entire world.
It would have determined alliances.
Of course.
Who you could marry.
Right.
It wasn't just about blood ties.
No,
This was about survival.
Precisely. And this is where things get interesting.
Okay.
There's no mention of, chiefs or kings.
In the text.
In the text, right?
Right.
So leadership was likely based on wisdom and experience,
Okay.
not power or inheritance.
So you're saying these groups were relatively egalitarian.
That's what the text suggests.
Did that equality extend to men and women as well?
It seems like it did.
Wow.
Potentially because women played such a vital role in gathering food,
Okay.
which often made up, the bulk of their diet. It's a stark contrast to the gender hierarchies we see later with agriculture.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about, how different history might have been.
This emphasis on community makes me think about their spiritual beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
The text mentions animism and ancestor worship,
Yeah,
which seems so different from, modern religions.
they are.
So I'm curious, did this sense of community extend into their spiritual lives as well?
It's important to remember that for hunter-gatherers, religion wasn't this
Separate category.
exactly separate category.
Okay.
It was woven into every aspect of their lives.
Right.
So animism, the belief that spirits inhabit nature,
Right.
would make their entire environment feel
Alive.
interconnected.
Yeah.
Every action
Right.
has spiritual consequences.
I can see how that would make them stewards of the environment rather than just exploiters of it.
Exactly.
Did ancestor worship play a similar role?
Yes, it suggests this strong sense of continuity
Between
the past and present.
Yeah.
A responsibility to honor those who came before.
And then there's the shaman.
The shaman, yes.
Not just a spiritual leader,
Right.
but a healer, a judge.
Potentially even a leader in other ways as well.
Wow, imagine the responsibility on one person's shoulders.
I know, it's incredible.
The shaman sounds like such a fascinating figure.
Absolutely.
They must have needed a really deep understanding of both the physical and spiritual worlds.
They were a bridge between those realms.
Yeah.
Requiring deep knowledge, wisdom, and a strong connection to their community.
Truly a central figure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these nomadic groups, a really deep connection to nature,
Yes.
a relatively egalitarian society,
Right.
this fascinating spiritual life.
Absolutely.
We haven't even touched on their technology yet.
I know. And this might surprise people to learn that they weren't just folks running around with sticks and stones.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What kind of technology are we talking about?
Well, They might not have had smartphones,
Right.
but their skills were far from primitive.
Mm-hmm.
And at the heart of it all was fire.
Fire. How did that change things for them?
Well,
I mean, I know it's essential for warmth and cooking.
exactly. But it goes beyond that.
Okay.
Think about, the Greek myth of Prometheus,
Right.
who stole fire from the gods.
Yeah.
That shows you how important, almost sacred
Wow.
fire was to these societies.
Mhm.
It extended their day, allowing them to gather after dark,
Right.
strengthen their social bonds.
Gathering around the fire.
Exactly. Gathering around the fire.
It even allowed them to cook food,
Yes.
making more plants edible and potentially increasing their lifespans.
Absolutely.
Did having more time for social interaction
Yeah.
change how they communicated?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible that fire played a crucial role in the development of language and storytelling.
Wow.
And of course, let's not forget the practical applications.
Right.
Hardening tools, creating weapons.
Right.
It's hard to overstate the impact fire had.
So fire was a real game changer. The text also mentions other tools made from stone wood bone.
Antlers, even.
Even antlers. And
Yeah.
those bone needles they mentioned?
Oh, yeah.
Those are incredible.
Incredibly intricate,
Yeah.
requiring real skill and precision
Mm.
to create.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not just talking about basic tools here.
Okay.
They had bows and arrows,
Yeah.
harpoons,
Mm-hmm.
even boats made from reeds or logs.
Boats. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
They were venturing out to sea already.
It appears so.
Wow.
And let's not forget their oldest companion,
Which is?
the dog.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, the domesticated dog, somewhere around 15,000 BCE.
Wow.
Primarily for hunting.
It's amazing how they adapted and innovated to
Yeah.
thrive, not just survive.
Right.
It challenges this whole idea that they were simply primitive.
It really does.
And they weren't just focused on survival either. They also expressed themselves through art.
They did.
The cave paintings.
Yes.
The clay figurines.
All sorts of things.
The cave paintings in France and Spain.
Mm.
Some of them are over 35,000 years old.
I know, it's incredible.
What can we learn from those?
Well, it speaks to the depth of their culture and creativity. They
Yeah.
had this desire to create, to leave their mark on the world.
And it wasn't just cave paintings.
Okay.
They had simple patterns on their tools.
Yes.
Clay figurines,
Pottery.
even early pottery.
Pottery. Now that's interesting,
Yeah.
because you're right, pottery usually comes much later.
With settled societies.
Exactly, with settled societies.
Yeah.
But the Jomon culture in Japan is a fascinating exception.
Okay.
Because they lived in these resource-rich coastal areas.
Mm-hmm.
Some groups could actually settle down
Wow.
and develop more complex societies.
So it seems like hunter-gatherer isn't this monolithic category.
It's not.
There was so much diversity,
Yeah.
adaptation and innovation within that way of life.
Exactly.
And keep in mind, this was a world where change happened incredibly slowly.
It did.
Like, ideas might take lifetimes to spread. It's almost like a whole different concept of time,
It is.
but the text emphasizes that change was happening,
It was.
even if it was imperceptible to them.
Right.
And this is really what sets the stage for that transition to farming,
Yes.
where things really start to accelerate.
Absolutely.
So we're witnessing the end of an era and the beginning of something completely new.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what caused this monumental shift from hunting and gathering to farming?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a complex one, too.
Yeah.
You can't really pinpoint a single event or discovery that triggered this whole transformation.
Right.
Instead, picture like a confluence of factors.
Okay.
A changing climate,
Okay.
a growing population,
Mm-hmm.
and generations of accumulated knowledge
Okay.
about plants and animals.
So it wasn't like someone just woke up one day and said,
Right.
hey, let's stick these seeds in the ground. See what happens.
Yeah. What we see in the archaeological record
Okay.
suggests a much more gradual process
So good.
of experimentation
Mm-hmm.
across different parts of the world.
Okay.
Imagine these early farmers
Yeah.
observing plants,
Yeah.
noticing which ones thrived in certain conditions,
Yeah.
slowly selecting seeds.
From the most successful plants.
Exactly.
So rather than like a single eureka moment, you're talking about a series of small innovations and adaptations happening over generations in different parts of the world.
It was a global phenomenon.
Wow. It's fascinating how something that probably felt so small at the time could have such a massive impact.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, was there any resistance to this change?
Oh, absolutely.
Because after all, hunting and gathering had worked
It worked for millennia.
for millennia.
Right. Why mess with a good thing?
Right.
I mean, it's easy to imagine that some groups clung to their traditional ways.
Yeah.
And viewed this newfangled farming business with a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
It probably seemed risky, unpredictable.
I can relate to that.
Really?
I still hesitate before I update my phone, even though I know it means missing out on new features.
I get that.
So what were the advantages that finally tipped the scales in favor of farming?
Well, think about it from the perspective of these early humans.
Okay.
Farming offered a more stable food source.
Right.
Instead of, chasing animals across vast distances
Right.
or hoping for a good berry harvest.
Right.
They could actually control their food production.
It must have been such a relief.
It must have been.
Especially in terms of food security.
Exactly.
Did that security have any impact on their social structures or even their beliefs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because farming allowed people to produce a surplus of food.
Right.
They could now store it for lean times.
Okay.
Or trade it with others.
Makes sense.
And this surplus really became the foundation for economic specialization.
Oh, interesting.
Not everyone needed to farm anymore.
Yeah.
So some people could focus on developing new crafts or skills.
That makes sense. So with this specialization, you start to see the emergence of different social roles. Artisans, priests. Did that specialization impact the relative equality that we saw with the hunter-gatherers?
Unfortunately, yes. As these communities grew larger and more complex, they required new forms of organization and leadership.
Okay.
Which led to more hierarchical social structures.
So we're talking chiefs.
Councils.
And eventually kings.
Eventually kings, exactly.
So with the rise of farming, we're seeing the seeds of many features of modern society being sown.
We are.
Settled communities.
Complex social.
Economic specialization.
All there.
And with those changes probably came an increase in conflicts, right?
That's a pattern we see throughout history, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You've got more people concentrated in one place.
Yeah.
Competing for resources.
And probably more reason to fight over them. Exactly. But it's important to remember that this transition to farming also had a significant impact on the environment.
It did.
Right? I remember reading about deforestation.
Yeah.
Soil erosion becoming major issues.
As people cleared land for agriculture.
Exactly.
That's a huge impact.
Did the need to manage these new environmental challenges further accelerate that shift towards more complex social structures?
Most likely.
Okay.
As the environmental impact of agriculture intensified, so did the demands on human labor.
Right.
And the need for coordinated action.
It's fascinating and a bit sobering to realize how this transition, while bringing so many benefits, also planted the seeds for some of the challenges we still face today.
Absolutely.
It's a complex legacy.
It is.
We're seeing progress and innovation, but also the emergence of new challenges and inequalities.
Yeah.
This is where the story starts to feel less like ancient history and more like the foundation for our modern world.
Right.
It's amazing to think that, over thousands of years, those early farming villages evolved into bustling cities.
Yeah.
Cities with complex social structures, incredible architecture, systems of governance. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
It really is.
Yeah.
This period is often called the Urban Revolution.
Okay.
And it really does mark another profound leap forward.
Yeah.
In human social organization and technological innovation.
Okay, I gotta ask, what drove this urban explosion?
Right.
What made people abandon their rural lives and flock to these growing cities?
Well, as agricultural techniques improved,
yeah,
they generated these larger food surpluses.
Okay.
And this freed up people to pursue other crafts and trades.
So instead of everyone needing to farm, you start to see artisans, merchants,
administrators emerging.
All these specialized roles.
And as these specialized roles developed, cities became these vibrant centers.
They did, of commerce, culture, and religion.
Absolutely. It's almost like they developed this gravitational pull, drawing people in from the surrounding countryside.
It's fascinating how that works.
It is.
More people lead to greater specialization, which leads to more innovation, which attracts even more people.
It's this self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah.
But as these cities grew larger and more complex, they needed new ways to maintain order and manage resources.
And that's where we start to see the rise of kings and emperors, right?
Not always immediately.
Okay.
But centralized authority did eventually emerge,
right?
Often intertwined with religious beliefs and practices.
So these power structures evolving in response to these social and economic changes.
Exactly.
But let's not forget the technological advancements that fueled this urban growth.
Oh, of course.
I'm thinking about innovations in irrigation.
Construction.
Weren't those critical?
Absolutely. They played a crucial role.
Yeah.
I mean, think about those incredible pyramids and ziggurats.
Oh, yeah.
They're testaments to human ingenuity.
And the power of organized labor.
Exactly.
It's one thing to imagine, like, a few families building a dwelling together.
Right.
But to imagine the kind of coordinated effort it took to construct those monumental structures.
I know.
It makes you wonder about the lives of those who labored on those projects.
It's a question archaeologists and historians continue to explore.
Yeah.
And while those monuments are awe-inspiring,
of course,
it's important to remember that not all aspects of city life were glamorous.
Right. Increased population density also brought challenges.
It did.
Like sanitation disease.
And social inequality, unfortunately.
This reminds us that progress isn't always a straight line.
No, it's not.
Every societal shift brings its own trade-offs.
It does.
It's a valuable lesson as we kind of look back on this whole journey.
It is.
From hunter-gatherers to city dwellers.
Yeah.
We've seen innovation, adaptation.
Even chance encounters. Shaping the course of our species.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of human history.
It does.
And how the choices of one generation can really reverberate through time.
They do.
Shaping the world for generations to come.
Absolutely.
It makes you wonder what the next chapter holds.
Doesn't it?
As technology continues to advance at this unprecedented pace.
Right.
How will human societies adapt and evolve?
Yeah.
Will we learn from the mistakes of our ancestors? Or are we destined to repeat them?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What lessons can we draw from the past?
To navigate the challenges and opportunities of the future.
Exactly.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm really struck by the ingenuity and resilience
I am too.
of those who came before us. It makes you appreciate the complexities of human civilization.
It does.
And realize that we're still writing our story.
We are indeed.
Yeah.
So as you go back to your daily lives,
Right.
consider this.
Okay.
What aspects of those ancient societies, their connection to nature, their resourcefulness,
their sense of community, might we want to rediscover or strengthen in our modern world?
It's something to think about.
It is a thought-provoking question.
It is.
And one I hope our listeners will ponder.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through time.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.